Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Artful Leadership Interview Series. I'm excited today. We're going to be talking to Brandon Steppe of the David's Harp Foundation here in San Diego. If you are new to Artful Leadership, please click subscribe and follow the interview series. We're going to be having a bunch of really interesting artist leaders this spring who have a lot to say about working with youth through the arts. And so check us out. So the mission of the David's Harp Foundation is to inspire, educate, and empower system-affected and homeless youth to achieve academic success through music education, sound engineering, and multimedia production. And I met the folks from David's Harp Foundation through their work with youth impacted by homelessness here at the Monarch School and got really excited about what they were doing and finding out a little bit more about them. Cool. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to jump in on this call with me. I'm having a lot of fun just connecting with artist leaders in our community and getting to know you a little bit and finding out a little bit about, what are you doing that you're excited about? What's your organization excited about? What are the challenges? And some things that I'm also super curious about is artist identity in leaders. Like what are the differences about leaders who are artists, and how do we bring our creativity to the way that we lead? And so those are some things that I might throw out there. And also how can the community support what you're doing and get involved? Cool stuff. So that's kind of where we're headed.
I love it. I'm just happy to be here. I really am. I loved what, I was surfing through some of the other ones you did, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I was really excited to be able to be a part of it.
Yeah. So, just for the viewers who aren't familiar with your work, will you tell us a little bit about who you are and David's Harp Foundation?
Absolutely. So my name is Brandon Steppe. I'm an audio engineer by trade. I'm also a local music producer, but so I stepped out of a corporate job in 2006 and started a garage recording studio in Southeast San Diego. And in the process, I found my passion for mentoring youth. Had never mentored youth before, but a young man named Ray Vaughn came and knocked on the door of the garage studio and wanted to come in and make hip hop music. So I initially was hesitant, but then eventually allowed him to come into that space. And I just saw the day melt off this kid in a way that was amazing. I saw him interact with art. And as a 16-year-old going to Lincoln High School, he was able to just be a kid. And I got to see the power of the platform of music. And so people always ask where the name David's Harp comes from. It comes from a story in the Torah where David plays this harp and the torment leaves the king. And I got to see this transaction of music, this deep spiritual transaction happening where a kid was able to be a kid in the midst of some grown-up situations he probably shouldn't have been in. And so from that transaction, and it's not even a transaction, but it felt like that because when he came in, it was just this deep need, you know what I mean? To want to be connected to something that he could be himself in. Yeah. And I just felt the need to want to share. I was like, I want to share with this guy what I know. I've walked through the same streets. I grew up in the same neighborhood with some of the same issues. And in that process, I just sounded like not like anything you want to listen to, just typical mentor guy where you're just pointing out the flaws in people.
Right.
And it's kind of a fail. But at the same time, we had built this relationship in the art that we kept coming back to.
Yeah.
And eventually I had some really tough times in my own life. My wife was pregnant. She had bilateral cysts on her ovaries during that pregnancy. The same day we found out that our daughter was diagnosed with Down syndrome prenatally, all in the same day. And then through that process, I just took the mask off with this young guy, him and another kid named Austin, and just let it go. And in that process, learned what it meant to earn a mentoring relationship in a young person's life by being transparent and honest. And those young people began to have this conversation with me based on transparency. And that's pretty much, in essence, what the David's Harp Foundation is today. It's just the platform of music to be able to start a conversation with a young person, to give them the space and all the tools that they need to create the art that they love, but also to be present and transparent in a way that we're accessible to be able to have conversations if the young person is willing. I always tell the staff, we all have a flashlight. We can either shine it on people and young people and point out their flaws, or you can shine it on yourself and then let people see your strengths and your weaknesses and allow them to walk in that light with you if they're willing. So that's kind of the whole premise of David's Harp.
Yeah. So you guys have a space downtown, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, you guys have a really cool space.
We do. Yeah, it's super cool.
I've been down there. Tell us a little bit about what's available for youth when they come and hang out with you guys.
Sure. So we have a full-on recording production facility, and it's state-of-the-art. Discovery Channel, Sony, some major funders have gotten behind us to build. We have now 3 state-of-the-art studios inside the facility. And so young people come in, they're doing multimedia production, which is like YouTube style videos, not like YouTube style where you would think of a YouTuber, but more like videos for professional companies, right? Like the local coffee lady down the street, they'll do a professional video for that lady, but then they also take those videos and do music videos and their own artistic things as well. We also have obviously recording studios, so kids are doing music production, a lot of hip hop production, electronic music production, songwriting, and these curriculums are all 6 weeks modular so that young people can have successes as they move through. But we average about 1.5 years per, with the student engagement. Okay. And that's with a demographic of youth that sometimes can be from North to South County, back and forth in group homes and things of that nature. So that's basically what they're doing, those music and video and a combination of that and whatever they can dream of. They have podcasts going on. Right. We're really, really youth voice empowered as far as our programming is concerned since day 0. Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever the kids want to do, we figure it out. It's like, what do you want to do? Okay, well, let's do it.
Well, that's what's going to keep them coming, right? If
Absolutely.
They feel like they get to do their thing there, then they're going to keep showing up. And that's one of the tenets of kind of creative youth development, right? Is that students are really empowered and have a real voice in the programming. So the youth that are coming, how do they find out about you guys? Sure. Who are they? How does that happen?
Sure. So this is where we're a little bit different from a typical CYD organization. I personally know that my little brothers and sisters have passion for art, but I've also seen that there's things that have to be accomplished in their lives for them to get to that next step. Mm-hmm. Some of that is school. Some of that is for some of our youth is completing probation and not going back to juvenile hall. Some is checking themselves into the shelter for the night and getting off the street. Right. So what we do is we exclusively work through referring partners. Monarch is one of our referring partners, San Diego Youth Services, Voices for Children, San Diego, the probation department. So we work with these referring partners because what it does is it gives us the opportunity to link with them and their programming. So if a young person needs to successfully navigate probation, we can link arms with probation and say, all right, you're coming through probation to the studio. Now, what are the stipulations for probation? How can we help you with that as you grow in this process? So young people are invited into the studio. You don't have any, there's no like requirements or they don't have to meet a certain GPA. But once they're here, they have their circle, their community of artists. If they want individual studio time on top of that class time, they can trade either good grades or behavior for studio time. And we make record deals with kids where they actually get to sign a record deal and they can get additional time. And that's really the driving force behind a lot of our what the rest of the world would consider like a success. Oh, this girl went from a 0 GPA to a 4.0, that kind of stuff. But really what we're about is about developing that relationship. You know what I mean? And knowing that those are parts of the young person that also need to be developed along with this relationship. Yeah. So how do you kind of mesh all that together? That's what we've done, is brought all these pieces here, said this is your home. But we care about that other stuff. We care that you're successful outside of this place as well.
What I'm loving is you're creating a real win-win situation, because it's something that's going to be in their life regardless.
Exactly.
The other parameters that are around them, and then you have to have those developmental relationships in order to succeed. So it's kind of like, it's a great way to kind of like kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
Like, the kids have to have those things ticked off, but in the meanwhile, they're getting the thing that really probably was the reason why they got in trouble, or they're in those difficult situations to begin with, because they didn't have that community and that support or whatever. So
absolutely. So a win for me. So there's programmatic wins where people are like, oh man, that's amazing. Can't believe that kid's succeeding at that level. Yeah. A win for me is, the other day, a young man who we worked with inside East Mesa Juvenile Detention Facility came out, and he was coming to receive studio time here. Well, he made a poor decision, and in the process, he was talking about going on the run. So leaving his group home situation and leaving. And we're like, no, you go back. If you have to go back to jail, then you go back. Yeah. You do your 20 days, and we'll be here when you get out. And the win was that he didn't make a bad decision on top of a bad decision. So we have so many things like that, where young women haven't gotten in cars and went to Las Vegas with people, or stuff that hasn't happened, that'll never show up on any funder's report. That for me, those are the real wins, and the power of the platform of art when you use it for mentorship. Yeah. And those are the things that I'm most passionate about. Those moments where a young person, you're there present to be a sounding board, and they make a decision in the midst of a bad decision that turns things around, even though it may not seem like a good thing at the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so often I think kids get in this like black and white thinking, where they're like, well, I already screwed it up, so I'm just going to chuck the whole thing.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, and then they just plummet even farther, instead of being like, okay, whoa, I did a little something that didn't work. How can I pause, reflect, get back on my bigger vision, and stay the course here? So that's really cool that you're seeing that. What other kinds of like transformation are you seeing with the youth that you're dealing with?
One of the things that we see the most often is art has this way of just bringing out a confidence that's contagious, right? So like, there's young people that come in and they don't think their personal story is worth anything. They feel like, maybe it's, a mess and broken, and they don't want to share. But what they notice when you get into the songwriting process is that it makes for great songs. Yeah. And they get to hear their story come out of their mouth in a way that's celebratory. So we get to see that a lot, where young people are creating original music that really allows them to explore a side of themselves that they never saw as positive. And now we're high-fiving around the studio, and people are listening to their music and celebrating their story. Mm-hmm. It's like an arm's length way to be able to process things. It's so powerful, so powerful. Yeah. So that's I think those are some of the other things that we see, that I'm always just smile whenever somebody comes out of the booth for the first time and they've processed their story in a different way, and they're proud of it. That's a cool thing.
Yeah, well, and that's such a gift of transformative use of the arts, I think, is that moment where the thing that's the wound, or the thing that's been the thorn in your side or whatever, becomes the gift.
Yes.
And then it also becomes the gift to the community. And I think, of just my experience of music, I don't think there's any medium that allows me to feel along with someone in the way that music does. Like when I hear a singer or I hear a song, like like I'm in it, you know, I am so in it with you. And that's partly because I'm just a huge music lover, but I think music just has the power to connect people in their feelings in a way that's really unique. So that's
Totally.
so powerful, I think, when kids can be like, oh wow, like my pain can be a beautiful shared experience, and then what, you know?
Yeah.
And where do
Well, that's it. That's it. Especially, I mean, even coming from Monarch, you see this all the time, where there's there's a certain shame that's an internal shame, but really externally nobody's looking at that way. But kids have this way of, and people I think have a way of, teenagers especially have this way of drawing into themselves and having a self-image that isn't necessarily even a public thing. Like it's an internal thing more than it's even an external thing, you know, and it becomes so magnified in your mind. So when you're in a community of art, where the norm is for us to dig in and share and to make songs that are powerful, then it just is that much easier to be able to reprocess some of the stuff that you've processed even incorrectly, or maybe just skewed vision that you're viewing this in a way that's not even realistic to the way the world is, you know. And for the teenager that's really withdrawn, I've seen some moments of, man, I really can do this. I really am good. I had a kid the other day. Teenagers usually don't have Freudian like slips like this, which is just like, I'm really good at this. Like in the middle of the class, I'm really good at it. I was like, you are really good at it. She was like, oh, did I say that out loud? I was like, you did, and you are good at this.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's where then our identity gets to change, right? From being the youth that's homeless or the youth that's on probation or whatever to now I am an artist, now I am a rapper, now I'm a singer, now I'm a producer. And then we get to tell a whole different story about who we are, rather than being the kid that's always in trouble or that's, you know, seen in some sort of scarcity sort of conversation.
Yeah.
That's
and then there's the conversation about hip hop. You know, I mean, San Diego is a very conservative place. I run into the conversation about hip hop frequently. How could you use something so negative for something positive? That kind of narrative where, you know, people haven't been exposed to all the different facets of the art, or they just have a negative impression of it in general. But, you know, my thing is when a young person comes in and you meet them right where they're at, there's just something powerful about just respecting somebody and listening. To be honest, I'm not the hugest hip hop fan in the world. I grew up mostly listening to a mix of pop, hip hop, of course, and then like jazz music. I'm hugely influenced by jazz music. Went to the School of Performing Arts down in the South Bay, played saxophone. So, you know, I'm like, it's not that I'm advocating for hip hop, I'm advocating for youth, you know. So if they're passionate about it, then let's figure out how we can meet them in that space. And so, you know, you become a rapper.
Everybody's got to start somewhere, though, you know.
Yes.
And I'm thinking about, now I have like two different questions I want to ask, and like, because I know some of the guys that are working with you who are amazing jazz musicians and who, you know, who are playing in bands and gigging all over and doing that outside. So how cool is it that they're working with the youth and then they can like expose them to all these other things? I think a youth a lot of times thinks like, I'm into this thing. I'm into metal, or I'm into rap, or I'm, you know, whatever it is. And once you become a musician, it's like, oh, well, this whole world opens up of like, you can love all these cool things. And you have a great team of guys that can do that for them. My other curiosity is, for you, like, what was your way into the arts or music as a kid? Like, how did that start for you?
Sure. So for me, it was really a way for me to connect with my dad. My dad was a firefighter. He was gone a lot of nights. He loved jazz music. And so I really began to get into jazz music because I saw that it was a way for me to be able to share those moments with him. But I think I really got into the arts when I started to play the saxophone and going down to the performing arts high school and seeing the camaraderie, not even camaraderie, it's really community. It's authentic community. And it's regardless of what you believe, who you are, what's your orientation, any of that. It's just this community that's way deeper than that, like of sharing, coming together various parts to create something united. And I think that there's something so powerful about that process. And I was drawn to that, the ability to be able to come together and play your own part in something way bigger than yourself. I love that. I love that about orchestral music and band music, where there's multiple pieces and everybody plays their individual role for the greater good. And that's kind of what I'm finding my passion in organizational management too, even though I'm tired from writing grants right now. You know what I mean? I have to play my role. And right now, I mean, I was the only guy at some point that was working with the youth. And now there's 3 instructors over in this direction right now that get to have all the fun.
Yeah.
But I got to play my role, right?
Yeah. Well, Well, I'm curious for you, as you know, having that music background, how do you kind of keep that artistic part of you alive now that because I feel like this happens so often with artist leaders, like we start because we have this amazing interaction with the kid around this art form, and then we create this organization around it, and then suddenly we're the person in the office sending the emails and writing all the reports and not doing that work with the kids and not doing our own art. So I was just kind of curious, what's your relationship to that, and how is that working for you?
I always have my class, regardless of what it is. I'm going to have my class. It's not every class like it used to be, but what it is for me is that it's transitioned from wanting to be a part of every interaction to watching young people grow through this program that are now what we call artist mentors or teaching artists.
Right.
And now, so we have 4 young people that grew up in the program and are now teaching young people, and that becomes my passion, to create seats for them. So it's the interaction is still very present. How do I connect continually through the art? Me personally, I take my saxophone out on Fridays and I play in the street. And you know, I'll go play in the canyon. You know what I mean? I still have my connection to the art, but I'm finding my connection through the youth. To the youth through these young people that I've watched grow now. And it's interesting transition. I was in Baltimore not too long ago, and I'm almost 39. I get called old every day because I'm the oldest guy around here, but I really noticed that I'm at this new space in life where I am getting to that place where I'm not considered youth anymore. And it's cool to be able to make space for those young people that are now the ones that are actually sitting in those. It's just a different level of engagement. And I actually love this season. It's an interesting season. It's full of tough conversations, you know what I mean, with young people about growth and adult growth, not necessarily teen growth, which is even funner, more complex, you know.
Yeah. So you're at a kind of a rewarding place as a leader where you can kind of do with more complex issues.
Yeah. And then I still go in there and freestyle too, Rachel. Don't get it twisted. Look, I'll get in there. I'll go in there like I get caught out. I get caught out a lot, so I stay ready. I got the axe. You got to stay sharp, you know. And it's hard to freestyle the trap music, but I'm learning. You know what I mean? And I practice in my car. I hope they never see this of me. I do practice in my car.
The deal is that you have to. Who is your team? So you've got youth that have come through your program, and then you've got some other instructors. Like, who are the guys that you're bringing to work with?
So we have a really, really diverse, really diverse team over here. So we got a couple that, like I said, grew up in the program. Got a guy named Adrian Quintero, really great hip hop producer. He's actually producing professionally now, but is also doing audio engineering locally and has learned all that in the program, making a good living as well as being a teaching artist. We got a young man named John Keith. His real name is Jonathan Randall. Jonathan Randall, but his hip hop name is John Keith. So he's like, don't call me Jonathan Randall. Right, but I keep putting it out there. I put the government names out there. It's what I do. Got to keep them humble, you know. But he's actually at South by Southwest right now performing, so that's cool. Except for he had a class today that we had to cover, but that's cool, you know. He's doing well. There's our lead instructor's name is Rashad Graham, and he's a friend of mine for a long time, a brother really. But he's a professional jazz musician, like you said, and tours and plays out 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week. Joseph Mack is a professional producer and pianist who's now our director of programs. We have a young lady named Amaris Gillian. Yeah, it's so hard to find instructors for our young ladies to look up to, and she is amazing. She's phenomenal. So who else? I'm going to get in trouble. I'm missing people. We got a guy named Brandon Valencia. We call him Brandon V, and I'm Brandon S. You know, kind of like elementary school. Really talented hip hop producer as well. A guy named Michael Hughes, who is a guitarist and does more like indie vocal stuff, but definitely a great teacher. And then there's just like around those instructors, there's also the community of artists that come and support. You know, we have people from all over the place that just will drop in and do classes and be guest speakers and open up their spaces for youth to come experience and visit. So it's really a community effort. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that I've been hearing in a number of the artists that I've been talking to is that there becomes this sense, I think, when you're working in the arts of almost like more of a movement.
Yes.
And than a project or an organization. It's like there's just this movement around making these cool things happen. And I go to events and I'm like, wait a minute, these are all David's Harp guys here, and they're doing this whole other thing. And and so I've had this wonderful sense of kind of dipping into the vibe of that whole community that kind of carries that same soulfulness wherever they're showing up. And that's a really cool gift to the community outside of what they're giving to the kids. Like,
I agree. And it's what makes them relevant. I mean, like my whole thing in structuring this organization was not to take them away from the art and make them teaching artists.
Right.
That makes them irrelevant. Like so Jonathan's at South by South. John Keith is at South by Southwest.
Randall.
And, Randall, yeah. He's at South by Southwest right now. And you know, we encourage that. So what's your touring schedule? How are we going to work around it this year?
Yeah.
You know, you're doing an album. I know that's stressful. You got 2 weeks left. How can we work around that? At the same time, it's really important to have consistency with young people. So, you know, that's the trade-off is, hey, we're flexible, but consistency is important, especially in some of the juvenile justice stuff that we're doing now. It's essential.
Right. So we didn't talk about that, but you guys have your spot, but then you guys do outreach to a number of different places as well, right? Where you're in a bunch of different spaces, and you're in one of the juvenile facilities now.
Absolutely.
I saw a post or something about it.
Yeah. So we're in East Mesa Juvenile Detention Facility, working with the YOU program, that's Youth Offenders Unit, and these young men have really long extended stays down there, from 360 plus days to 500 something odd days, and it's a challenging environment by nature, but what we're seeing is this thing is powerful down there. When we first came in, first off, I have to shout out the division chief. Her name is Mindy McCartney. She is awesome. She wants art in those spaces. Anytime you get probation saying, we want art, we want kids to interact with art, powerful. I mean, so when we came into that space, this particular unit that we went into hadn't had programming in quite some time. And when we went in, we really wanted to go in to see what this platform could actually do in that space. And I was like, let's go, just give me whatever you think the hardest thing is, let's do that. And when we went in, with these mobile backpacks that have a full-on studio in them, 3 of them, we walked in this space and set these things up, and it was just instant reception. As soon as we do a beat demo and they get to hear exactly what's going on and see the talent, it's like, oh, I want to do this. You know, it's that instant kind of reception that only art can bring. And what we've seen over the past year is young people go from wanting to be rappers to seeing how Pro Tools and audio engineering works to basically creating an internship themselves for themselves. And now we have young people that after 6 weeks of a program with 6 weeks of good behavior can come outside to 2 field trips here. So we're doing regular every 6-week field trips for students here that went from, well, first one was 4 students out of 24, then it was 8, then it was 9, then it was 12, then it was 14, and this is growing and growing and growing and growing, which means that kids are getting out earlier because they're having good behavior. And then what they did was from that, created and self-select into an internship where now 2 young men have, or 3 actually, 3 have gone through this process where they can change out of their prison uniform into plain clothes and go in and be peer mentors. So they're actually audio engineering inside the facility for other youth. It's really, really cool. And to see them come change clothes, go in with our teaching artists into other parts and teach their peers, and then come back some of the stuff. I mean, one of the young men, as he's coming out last time, is like, today I learned I can motivate people. It's like, you learned you can motivate? Yeah, it's huge moments. Like, wow. So, yeah. So from there, it doesn't stop there because, you know, we got young people coming out. So how do we welcome them back into the community? And you mentioned in the beginning, what's a need? This is the biggest need. When we went into the juvenile hall through California Arts Council grant, it was just to do beats. The internship was built on top of that. Now we're trying to build an externship where we're welcoming young people back into the community, into this community of support here, but also giving them the job skills that they're going to need to be able to transition and get these high-paying jobs in hotels, doing audio visual, doing audio engineering in houses of worship, wherever they can find work. And this is completely, I mean, I was writing a grant today for this, and it's still going to be delayed. They're coming out. We're going to serve them. We're going to figure it out. But yeah, it was definitely an unforeseen blessing. You know what I mean? Like, all right, let's here we go, another program. So yeah,
and what a way to just get in there and do super preventative work too, right? Like, nab them now, then they don't have to go back in, because I'm sure there's a huge rate of those kids going back in, either as youth or as adults.
No, absolutely, and it's heartbreaking, to be honest.
And they go back. My ex-husband is a counselor who used to work there, and so we would talk so much about how hopeless it was once they left there. They have no community to go back to. There's no accountability. There's no support. There's no plan. And so how cool for kids to go into a community like yours and have like so many great opportunities, just carving a path for a real future for them.
Yeah. And I think the best thing for me is there's a couple off ramps in that program. One is just the ability to be able to get out of the day-to-day monotony that comes with that scenario, and to be able to create art in that space, to be able to pour your life into a song, to record and do something you never thought you were going to be able to do. That's a cool thing. That's one positive off-ramp. The internship was a whole nother thing that's a cool positive off-ramp. But the relationships that are being built, the ability for when they get out to say, hey, I expect to see you at the studio day one. And our director of programs, Joseph Mack, he'll be the first one to tell them, hey, look, I'm going to leave this, thumb drive in your locker when you get out. It's got all information you need and your music from when you were in here. And I expect to see you day one at the studio. And that expectation leads to that continued relationship. And I mean, what's going to disrupt? To me, it's amazing, but at the same time, it's not shocking that art could be a disruptor for this prison pipeline scenario that we see in the community that I come from. such a powerful tool. Why wouldn't it be able to solve some of our biggest, most pressing issues that nobody has answers to?
Yeah.
But I was still shocked. I'm actually still kind of shocked. Like, wow, I can't believe it's that powerful.
Yeah. Wow. That's super exciting. That is super, super exciting. Where do you get your inspiration? Like, are there other leaders who are doing stuff, or are there like authors or musicians or artists or people that you're looking to that are just like giving you ideas or motivating you right now?
I mean, honestly, my head's kind of, it's kind of sad. My head's kind of down. I'm like this. I'm like walking around, focused where we're at. But when I get a chance to stick my head up, there's so many people locally that inspire me. Nate at Movement B. What's Nate's last name? I can't remember. Hey, David, what's Nate's last name? Howard. Yeah, Nate Howard.
I did an interview with him last week. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one yet. Yeah, he's super inspirational to me. There's a lot of people in the art scene. You interviewed Julie. To me, the work Julie does is inspiring because it's so foreign to me. Right. That stuff is like, to bring her in was like, oh, thank you. I don't know how to do this, and we need to do it better. So Julie is inspirational in a way. I'm inspired by a lot of our creative youth development organizations that are around as well. To see how like Transcendence or Step Beyond is using dance to be able to interact with youth, or even Art's a Reason to Survive, how they've kind of invented arts now, and James is doing such a phenomenal job. Yeah, there's a lot of good work that's happening around, and a lot of it's kind of flying under the radar too. There's a guy named Derek Hodges that not too many people know about, or maybe they do because he's really popular, but they maybe don't know the power of the program that he's starting. Super powerful stuff going on, and so shout out to Derek and social workers.
I'm gonna edit a video I did with him earlier this week, and that'll be.
You're everywhere, Rachel. You're everywhere.
I've just been like, who are these people? Because I was one of those invisible people for a really long time. I've been at the Monarch School for over 20 years. And I've been doing therapeutic arts after school. Like, I've done mentoring. I've done all that stuff. But when you're in your little organization, it's like, I feel like I've been in this vortex for such a long time of just, dealing with the weeds of what's happening here. And we celebrated my 20th anniversary, and I was like, all right. It's time for me to kind of branch out and see, because all the good people come through Monarch, but I'm working with them to connect them to our youth. But what's so fun for me about what I'm doing now is really building a community of all of us who are doing this together. And then I started to talk to Matt, and he was like, everybody you want to talk to is in this network. And come join our network and come do stuff with our network. And so it's been really fun for me to meet all these people. And I would love to see that community of leaders and artists have more relationships with each other that are not just related to, what are you doing in your job, and but having these more human interactions. So that's partly what I'm trying to do with this interview series. And there's the work that we're doing that's just sort of under the radar, and people in the community have no clue what amazing stuff is happening every day in all these spaces. And
for me, the organizational piece is interesting because there's equity issues surrounding organizations. The work is the work, right? So for 7 years, I was working on pedagogy myself, not because it was that, but because it's just the work. Right. Because I was called to that work, and I took that seriously outside of organizational structure. And I think that the hardest thing about this sometimes, and I actually talk to Derek about this sometimes, is it's the equity issue in funding for anything that's programmatic can be difficult. It's really it's a hard thing to watch from the outside, because the people that I know are doing the good work aren't always the people that get tapped as organizational leaders, and so there's this gap, there's a funding gap, but there's also a gap of, it's just an equity gap where how can good work be acknowledged, be supported? And the answer is by people like me. So our organization is like small to teenage, but it's kind of my personal mission to see that Derek's work gets recognized. And I know that there's other people in the community that see that and are sacrificing for the same purpose. I think it's the only way that it can happen, because otherwise this work, it just kind of flies underneath the radar. And it's frustrating. It really is frustrating sometimes when you know you have a way to connect and you want to be able to share that and grow it, but it's just hard, you know? So, yeah.
Right. Well, and something I'm so curious about is how can we really tell the story of how powerful artists and the art are, the transformational work. And that, I mean, I'm an expressive arts therapist, so I have a whole body of training behind me in order to do this work. And yet, you know, when I talk to Derek, like some of the stuff that's so exciting to me is what just a pure artist approach can really offer youth in these really vulnerable situations, and how sometimes we have to kind of let go of the constraints of all the clinical little boxes that our professional training would have us operate in, and really meet kids in these vulnerable spaces. And like you were telling yourself, your real breakthrough moment was just taking the mask off and just being totally real. Like, this is where I'm at. And then let's connect as a man to young men, and then what happens. And I think that's the beauty of the arts, is that it gives us a safe container to do that, where we don't have to cross boundaries in an inappropriate way, but we can share in our humanity in these really powerful ways. And so if there's a way that we can tell that story as often as possible and in as powerful ways as we can, I feel like we can get more support around this particular approach, because it works.
It does. Yeah. And I think you hit it right on the head. The harder thing though, for me, has been, and the strategic thing that I had to do is then systemize that, because on some level, people as right brain people, we understand and we float and we flow. But in order for things to be received in the community with where everybody's not right brain like that, you have to systematize things and bring them in a way that can be understood. And I always, you know, that's always a tough thing for me to reduce what happens here, what I get to see relationally, to we trade good grades for studio time is almost a shame, but at the same time, that's okay, because we do trade good grades for studio time. You know what I mean? That's an authentic thing that we do. So, and I can't, like I always tell the guys at CYD, I'm like, look, I don't have 6 generations to fight the fight that says art is useful. I'm not going to be around that long. So from a pragmatic standpoint, I'm going to understand that art is useful, and then let people see the expression or the results that come from that, and then back them into the conversation about how that happened. Because what else are we going to do? You know what I mean? I don't have the time to advocate in that way, but some people do, like Matt Dorigo's advocating in that way, and that's amazing. We need people to do that. But yeah, until that happens, we're going to have to be very, like, I think strategic as artists to be able to show people what they consider to be useful outcomes, and not insist that they see the outcomes of art for art's sake. And that, I mean, trust me, I don't even like saying that, but it's just true. And this is where we live. How are we going to be able to tell the story to get the work funded is at some point is the question. And then at what cost? And that's where Julie comes in for me. You know, like, there is a cost. There's some lines I'm not going to cross. When you're talking about the space in that studio where young people come and they're able to express themselves, and it's not transactional. It's a sit down conversation where I share who I am, and if you're willing, you share. I'm not going to slide a piece of paper over to you and say, tell me all about you before we even have a conversation, and then I'll use that as a baseline. I'm not going to do that. So that runs into the issue of how then do I tell a funder, here's where it was and here's where it is now. How do we tell that story? I'm like, Julie, if either you're going to be famous, is what I told her. You're going to be speaking all over the world because we came up with something so crazy using art for this, or it's just going to flop. But either way, we're going to try it,
Yeah. That's so cool, because she just invited me to speak with her at the Boost conference that's coming up, because I've been trying to look at what are the the youth development research pieces that are happening that are really taking a look at social emotional learning, and also the impact of relationships. And since that's really the work that we're doing is relational, there's so much research that's coming out right now that is like seminal, huge, longitudinal research that's showing that these kinds of relationships are the things that make all the difference for youth. So there's that. And then I wrote my thesis when I was doing my master's degree in expressive arts therapy on how we can use the arts to evaluate programs. Because I was getting stuck in that same spot of like working at Monarch and seeing all this transformation, and these like lame data situations were like not capturing the transformation or the beauty at all. So I did a whole project and wrote this big thing to really capture how do you tell the stories of the arts and the transformation that happens in the arts through the arts. And you can complement that with your data. But the arts have a very unique way of telling that story that's super impactful for the people that have the money, So she and I just had a talk today about, super excited about it. Okay, so how do we do this, and how do we get this information out there? So,
that's cool. That's cool. The only other thing I throw on the top of that is my corporate career, I think, allowed me to see that people may agree that art is useful. People may agree that, even social and emotional factors are important. They may agree outwardly, but inwardly, some of them are like, this is fluffy nonsense. I need to see something solid that I know is a real factor in youth development, what they consider to be youth development. And I think that the research itself is huge. So when you're talking about there's groundbreaking research, that's huge. But that also has to then be linked, and we have to kind of get out of our space and our understanding of why we know it's important, to be able to translate it, to show that it not only is it important where we know it's important, but it's also important in other places where other people think are important. And I think that as a CYD movement, we have to draw the lines for people. They have to be able to see this thing as essential. If they already saw it as essential, they wouldn't have cut arts programming in the first place, right? But the proof's in the pudding. Yeah. I mean, it really is. So we have to be realistic in that. And I think that people like you and Julie that have, I mean, you've dedicated your life to this thing, and you know what it is, and I get to glean from that information. But I'm also, I find myself in an interesting space, and maybe a lot of this comes from a cultural space too, where I've been communicating and basically code shifting my whole life, right, for people in different spaces. But learning how to take this work and code shift it into different spaces, I think is like what I'm, almost like my gift to that research element. Like, how can we code shift this into this space? Yeah. How can we code shift it into that space? And in a way that's authentic and honest, not just, tweaking the data.
Right.
But in a way where it says, look, no, this is what we noticed, and that affects this, and that affects what you care about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is totally doable.
Mm. Totally. I'm excited to hear that. That makes me excited. Yeah. When I sat down with Julie was like, she gave me this look like, I think she's a mad scientist. I'm telling you, I love her. She's a mad scientist. She's like, it's going to work. We're going to do it. I'm like, all right, let's go. Just give me something to where when kids come in here, they understand that they're not a number, a statistic, and this is not just another program. trying to capitalize on their story in order to get funding. Give me something where kids can understand that this is a place that literally my whole family sacrificed for, other people's families have sacrificed for, to be an authentic space where they can build real relationships, where their voice is honored and respected. And we're not going to programatize it to the point where it smells like every other program in the world and it's not authentic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because otherwise I might as well pack it up. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, so it has to be introduced within the context of that close relationship and as part of the relationship building. And all that conversation I've had a lot with kids at Monarch is like, look, this is more about evaluating my work in the program that I'm doing than you. Like, you filling out all this stuff for me helps me tell the story of what I'm doing in a way that's truthful and that reflects your experience. It's not me saying whether you're doing a good job or not, you know.
Sure.
You know, so
Sure. And I think it's important. I mean, it's important to document.
Yeah.
I just have to wrap my head. First, I had to agree that it was important to document. That was hard.
Yeah.
As someone who's not a documentarian or someone who even comes from that space, I had to agree that it was important to document. Secondly, I had to come to the point where I was like, okay, I'm willing to document in the beginning, not just at the end. And then I was like, all right, but I can't. There's something really precious about how these relationships are built that I'm not willing to compromise. And that's where the art comes back in. It's like, so we're talking about using podcasts. We're talking about using the actual art itself or the artistic process itself to be able to do some of the same documentation. Yes. And I think that it means all the difference to me, you know, and in how we're relating to youth. Because I think ultimately the greatest compliment to youth is let's walk beside you. And I don't want to walk beside you holding your hand while we have a camera out, but I just want to walk beside you. You know what I mean? I don't have the desire to have this, this be a voyeuristic thing where then it's displayed, but I'm willing to walk beside you when there's no camera rolling and nobody's looking, you know, that kind of thing that is an authentic expression of love. It's also an authentic expression of true relationship. I mean, some of the realest moments that have ever happened and the most impactful, I don't want anybody to know. It's between that youth and the community, you know? So those also could be the very thing that keep the doors open, but I have to continue to walk on faith that if we do the work, the doors will stay open without me breaching that space that we've created for you. Yeah, so it's a balancing act and it's difficult, but I'm grateful for people like you. I really am, because what you guys bring to the table, the work that you've done, the research, the commitment, the student loans, all of that stuff, we need that, you know, and we need your heart because you connect the heart to the research. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, I just feel so fortunate to be part of a community where we can have those exchanges and grow over time. Like Julie and I have known each other for years, but we're just now kind of going, this is our thing that we can do here together. And it takes time, you know?
Yeah, it does.
So if people want to get involved with David's Harp, they want to support you guys, where do they go? What do they do? What do you need from the community right now?
So right now we need money. And I'm going to just say that straight up. Like, it's hard to find somebody who, unless you're somebody, you know Pro Tools, you make beats, you mentor youth, you actually have a mentoring heart and mind, and you know what I mean? Like, you're bigger than just your art. Mm-hmm. Those kind of people we need because they're special. They're like unicorns. But we really need the community to come along and support those artists that are already doing that too, because that's the difficult part for me, is to find people that resonate with this and that resonate with the community, see the platform and are willing to give. I mean, little bits, I'm fine, like whatever. Yeah. I'm just going to ask for that because that's what we need right now. Secondly, like, understand, like, this is what we need. But also, we need community, a community of support that's a professional community of support. So on the highest level, we do a thing called the Business Pod, where young people are, they're actually doing videos for Sony right as we speak, like right behind me right now, doing videos for Sony, doing videos for San Diego Symphony. They're creating things professionally for people. They need professional development. So we're always looking for people in the community that have those time management pieces and financial literacy pieces and all that kind of stuff to come alongside youth and speak for an hour, 30 minutes about what they do and present that. So we always need that. And then we need snacks. Is that weird? Like we just ran out of snacks. Yeah, we need snacks. Like these guys eat snacks like they're, I can't even explain it. Like they're just always gone. Like, wait, keep going.
I know exactly how that is. You're like, I just went to Smart and Final.
Yeah.
Okay. So money, food, and expertise. Like
there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So that's what we need. You can find us online at davidsharpfoundation.org, or you can find us on social media at davidsharpfound. And yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. But other than that,
thanks,
have a good one. Bye. Good to see you.
You too.
Bye now.
Bye.